imagine will befall this world now that you have gained your precious freedom?
I honestly don't know. But I doubt it will be pretty. A sorry tale of sin and suffering, hardship and pain.
And it was for this that you fought so fiercely? Why?
It's who we are. We fight. We survive. We endure. We don't need a reason. We are imperfect creatures. When we stumble, we reach for a shoulder to lean on. When we fall, we stand back up. We see the horizon, ever out of reach, and still we march on. Certain the answers lie just beyond it, because that is our way.
My congratulations. Relish this victory, knowing that you have but delayed the inevitable. Your world is already dead. May you enjoy an eternity on its blackened husk.
No miracles. He's Final Fantasy man, and a piece of him lives within you.
It seems Ultima's power was too great for this vessel all along. But while I have it, perhaps I can use it to set things right. And see Ultima's legacy. Bearers, dominance, crystals, magic, consigned to the flames. Even if it means the end of me. These are our terms.
There's got to be more to it than that.
You the most beautiful thing.
He is, isn't he? What are you gonna call him?
Let me see, let me see. Oh, read little one. Got a smile for your Uncle Gav.
Not so loud, you burp.
What? I was only...
Shh, you're scaring him.
It's all right.
Excuse me.
A sky of scattered tears, 1,000 years apart. Should they fade, I will not be afraid of the dark. For your
If you need a rest, I can take him.
still
to that.
Deep within my heart, showing me
The world's yours now. Yours to do with as you please.
never too far.
That's what Sid wanted. That's what they both wanted.
And thus did our journey end.
Wow. A farewell to fate. So the fire inside the souls of the two brothers brought about a new dawn. Wow. There we go. Roll credits on the first mainline Final Fantasy entry in 7 years. And man, what an ending. Seriously. Yeah, I mean, Dion dying was almost certain. Joshua dying was very highly likely. Clive dying for me was a 50-50. And all three of them dying, paying the ultimate price for the freedom of the world. That's pretty heavy stuff. And so yeah, it was definitely an emotional ending. They weren't playing with that one. And so yeah, really, really good game. I'm not going to go too deep into it. I've still got a few little things left to do. And well, we don't know if there's going to be like post-credit scene, anything else happening, epilogue maybe, I don't know. So I'm not going to go too much into it, but just kind of general feeling at the moment. And yeah, it's definitely one of the strongest Final Fantasies I've played in a long time. I think for me, just based on feeling right now, it's the best Final Fantasy since Final Fantasy X, I think for me. It's light years ahead of Final Fantasy 15. It's better than 13, and 12 I think is better than as well. I think 12 is the closest one to me, but this game is better than 12 for me personally, for what I like at my own taste. So we haven't had like the most incredible run of Final Fantasy since Final Fantasy X, but to me this is like Final Fantasy in terms of the mainline series. For me at least, it's really hit like an upward trend. It was on a bit of a downhill slope. 12 was already a bit more of a mixed game, but it critically reviewed extremely well, and a lot of people do love 12, and I do think 12 is a really good game. 13 even more, and it just kept going down and down and down. And 15, especially at launch, was kind of like the last straw, and I think a lot of people were starting to doubt whether Final Fantasy had another great game in it at this stage. And 7 Remake helped shift the narrative a bit, but it's still a remake of 7, so I put it in its own category. But for this game to turn out as good as it did, I think it's a very good sign for the future of Final Fantasy, and I'm so glad that it managed to stick it, like because there was a lot of expectation on this game, and they made some bold decisions, and overall I think they made it work. And I'm just very glad and relieved that this game wasn't something I ended up really disliking or really being unhappy with the direction they went and that kind of thing. There's so much to talk about. I probably have at least over an hour of just rambling thoughts right now. but I'm going to hold back on them and just say that I've really enjoyed myself here. I think fundamentally just the characters and the story, I think for me just really helped it hold up. I mean, the actors, the performances in this game were some of the best I've ever seen in the Final Fantasy series, easily. Like Joshua at the end there was absolutely fantastic. Clive's been brilliant throughout. Obviously Sid in the early going, and even like the NPCs, they've just been charming. They've been charismatic. They've been emotional when they needed to be, and the performances really aided the storytelling so much in this game. It's a heavy story with a lot of big things happening, and for me, the characters, the performances, the story, and the big moments of this game are really like what shone and stood out to me. And it takes a lot to make those things happen. So the pivotal moments in the game, you know, you need good writing for those moments. You need good acting, good performances. You need good music. You need good directing. You need good pacing. You need it all, right? And I think by and large, for the big moments of this game, they really nailed it. Some of the boss battles, like the big boss battles, they've made me feel things I never felt playing a Final Fantasy game. And big boss battles aren't the be-all end-all of Final Fantasy experiences, definitely. And again, there's a lot to talk about. But in terms of like highlight points, you know, like the big boss battles that we've had, for me, they really stood out and they nailed it for the most part. They did a really great job with just really selling the epicness and just really getting the heart pumping and just making you feel that sort of thrill of the action and the spectacle. I thought was really astounding at times. Just like the levels that they could hit were levels I didn't know Final Fantasy had in it, and so that was just truly incredible. The feeling that they managed to create, like the community feeling and the family feeling, to me that really sold the story in a nice way, because obviously it comes down to the same thing that Final Fantasy often comes down to. It's a god that's very singular in their will. They see humanity as beneath them, obviously, and you know this whole notion of the oneness of God. They don't need anything else. They don't need, you know, love. They don't need faith. They don't need connection. They don't need, you know, unity. They don't need any of that stuff. And Clive, obviously, especially at the end, is a lot of this whole, like, the reason we're strong is because we're united. You know, we're more than just one person. We are an entire population. We're a community. We're family. All of those things coming together, and that so often happens in these games. But for that to really stick and not feel like the classic generic thing that always happens, well, not always, but happens often in these Final Fantasy games, you have to have the sort of background and the context for it. And the entire game, from the very start, was all about the relationships, not just between family, not just between lovers, not just between, you know, father and son or whatever it might be. A lot of it was about building relationships with people that you're not connected by blood, people that you meet later down the line, people that share the same will as you, people that are fighting for the same thing as you. And they had sort of Elwyn, who had a vision for the world. Then we had Sid, who had a vision for the world. And then we had Clive, who really took those guys' legacy to heart and had the same vision for the world. And this sort of consistency that they managed to maintain through that, and the way it helped these sort of heroes of the story to build relationships and build these incredibly strong bonds. To me, all of that stuff, when it comes down to the real sort of crux of the story and the finale, the words have so much more weight when they're delivered. And that to me is one of the biggest successes of this game and what it managed to do so well. And so when you sort of bring all of that stuff together, for me, like in many of those kind of aspects, this game was one of the best I've played. It really was. And so it deserves major props. Seriously, like in general, it's got to be one of the strongest for that particular thing. And I really just it was a privilege to play through some of those moments and to enjoy some of that stuff. And so I'm just really just impressed. From that stuff, I'm well and truly impressed. And it bodes so well, because for me, that's so much of the core of what makes Final Fantasy brilliant for me. It's what made me fall in love with these games, like that feeling of just having a group of people that come together and they build these bonds and these relationships, and you really feel that sort of connection that they have, and they go up against the impossible together and find a way to win just through sheer like will and love and bonding and just the human condition and the human experience alone. That to me is still at the heart of what Final Fantasy is. And so if you're asking the question of whether, like, is this a Final Fantasy game, in that regard, it's one of the most Final Fantasy games I've ever played. I mean, going inside, destroying mother crystals, going into a giant crystal at the end, facing off against a god and winning through sheer power of human will alone, that's just Final Fantasy. I mean, there's no debate in that. And so obviously once we start talking like more in depth about things, obviously there's more to it than that. But that's why I feel like at a very base level, this game, it really sold to me like what a Final Fantasy is, and it really felt like a modern reimagining and kind of transition of the legacy of some of the oldest Final Fantasies. And especially having played through the likes of 3 to 6 now, I see a lot of those games in this one, and it feels like more of like a continuation of those games than some of the ones that came before it. But as I've been playing along, I felt a lot of the other Final Fantasies come through in 15, and 10 like was referenced to me not just because I'm a 10 sort of addict, aficionado, obsessed with the game, whatever you want to say, but I really feel like they were there and they were palpable for a lot of players that know Final Fantasy X. I mean, some of the quotes that you hear in there, some of the ideas, there was a lot of this sort of die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow. And to me, that's something that really felt like that's something that I really felt shine through from the likes of 10. And obviously, like a lot more of like the setting and the empires and the kingdoms and the kings and the mother crystals, traveling around to those. That was a lot more of the older Final Fantasy games, like pre-7 to me. More like aesthetically sometimes, in terms of like the way the world is structured. It reminded me of like a baby Final Fantasy 12. It was nowhere near, to me at least, like world-wise, Final Fantasy 12 blows it out of the water. And Final Fantasy 12's world is just sublime. To me, it's the best in the series. It's a shame that it didn't do so well in a bunch of other areas, but in terms of the world and stuff, it's great. And so this game to me feels like a fusion between, say, something like Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 12. Like, that's where I feel the most. And then there's sort of like, you know, bits of other Final Fantasy sprinkled in here and there. But it doesn't feel like an homage. It didn't feel like it was trying to reference the other Final Fantasy games just because it wanted to make people think it's a Final Fantasy game. It really took it to heart, and it shared a lot of like the core ideas and visions and just inspirations and settings and ideas from some of the Final Fantasies that we know and love from the past. So yeah, I feel like a lot of it was really on point, and we have to remember to put it in the context of these guys mostly, like primarily, are focused on making MMO games. Well, Final Fantasy 14 and its expansions, that's what their primary focus has been, and this is their first effort at making a mainline Final Fantasy game that's single player. And from that standpoint, for a debut effort, I'm calling it a debut effort on that front. Obviously they're not like newbies to the scene, but in terms of what this game is, for me it feels like a debut effort for CBU 3. I think they did a fantastic job, and it's, to me, like they have so much potential. They really could, like the next Final Fantasy from this one really could be the best Final Fantasy. Like it could be a top 3. It could be a top 3 to 5 for a huge percentage of the people that play it in the future. I really think that's possible. So if a first effort has made me believe that that's possible, I think they've done about as good as they can do. Like coming into this game, I gave it a 5% chance of being anywhere close to, say, Final Fantasy 6 to 10. And I thought at best, like its absolute ceiling was going to be that it's better than 12 and below 6 to 10. That was the ceiling. And for me, this game hit its ceiling. For me, no, it doesn't penetrate into like 6 and 10. But it's a damn good game, and it's a respectable enough effort. And could the next game that these guys make penetrate 6 to 10? I really think it could. To me now, it's 50-50. It's all there. Like, they've done some of the most difficult stuff there is to do in making a game really well. They've faltered in others, but some of the most core and important things I really think they've nailed, and that bodes well for the future. So this game, again, like I would say it's in that sort of, the Metacritic score was 88, and I would say that's a pretty good number, and that puts it basically as the best Final Fantasy I've played since Final Fantasy X. So yeah, very strong showing, very pleased with what I played. There are obviously going to be, once we get into it deeper, this is a very long credit, so I'm continuing to keep going without going into absolute full review mode. But yeah, once I do get into deeper things and just sort of obviously start to discuss more of the gripes and the things I didn't like as much, you'll start to see why it doesn't penetrate 6 to 10 for me at least. But still, this is a damn good effort, and I'm very happy that this game happened. We've got 7 Rebirth to come. You guys know that I'm a big fan of 7 Remake. Despite having such a major restriction on the game by just being the Midgar section of the game, I really think they did a fantastic job with that game with what they had available. So we had a good 7 Remake. We had a good Final Fantasy 16. We've got 7 Rebirth to come. And no doubt this team is going to be leading for Final Fantasy 7 as well. I'd be very surprised if the personnel changes. And so the future is bright. I've been saying it for a while, but now I can say it with more confidence. I think unless you are of those people for whom fundamentally the gameplay experience has changed too much for you to connect with Final Fantasy anymore, I totally get that, and I don't think those people should be dismissed, or like, you know, if they say that they thought that they didn't like the game as a result of that and they just couldn't play it and they couldn't get into it, and for them Final Fantasy is kind of finished. I feel really bad for those people. I really do. It's a real shame that that's the case. I really wish it wasn't, because I totally understand where they're coming from, and I consider myself very lucky that I don't feel like one of those people. And that for me is one of the biggest reasons why I would understand if people just said this game sucks and I didn't like it, and it's kind of put me off the Final Fantasy franchise, or it's your first Final Fantasy experience and maybe you play a very different type of game and the gameplay for you was just like, I don't like this kind of gameplay, so I don't really care about the rest of it because I've got to play through all of this stuff to enjoy the rest of the game. And so if that's kind of where you're coming from, and this ends up being a negative experience for you, then there's not too much I can say to really defend it, because in general I get it and I'm with you to some degree for that kind of thing. But if you've kind of enjoyed the gameplay and you thought the gameplay was really fun but you thought the rest of the game was kind of crap, then I'm definitely, like, I strongly disagree, and I don't see where you're coming from with that. I feel like there was so much to connect with in this game that if the gameplay was even like acceptable, serviceable for you, then surely this game should have been a positive experience. Like, it doesn't have to be a great game, but surely you at least had a good time with this one. And for me, like Final Fantasy 15, thinking about it, the gameplay for that game I did not like. Like, it was just sort of, it was absolute borderline serviceable for me. Like, just about enough for me to just play the game, and just, if the rest of the ingredients were good enough, I would enjoy it. And the gameplay was purely like a means to an end that maybe at some points was fun, it was decent, but in general it was very much like, you know, about the least I could enjoy the gameplay of a Final Fantasy game. And even for 15, if they really nailed the rest of the stuff, I still would have said 15 was a really good game, and it had the potential to be. And so that's just how I look at it with this stuff. With Final Fantasy, to me, the story, the characters, the world, that stuff is important enough a factor that I can live with gameplay that I'm not a huge fan of. And so for this one, it's the same thing. Like, I thought the gameplay was fun. It's way better than 15 for me personally. It was fun, but was it like, it's just still not fundamentally the type of gameplay experience that I want from a Final Fantasy game. It just isn't. And so despite that, I think the rest of the game was so strong, and areas that I put a lot of importance in were so strong that overall it still really held up and ended up being a high quality Final Fantasy experience for me. And so yeah, these credits, man, they are very long, but we must be getting very close to the end now. So I'm gonna kind of step out of review mode and basically just wait for the credits to finish up. But in general, I will take this time to just say thank you to everybody that has watched this series. It's been a pretty long one by Final Fantasy standards. I mean, especially going back in time, the Final Fantasies were getting maybe a little bit shorter. Final Fantasy 3 was literally like 40-something parts, I think, for the entire thing. So this was like a nice, big, deep Final Fantasy run. And even Final Fantasy 15, I think with the DLCs, it was 70-something episodes. It wasn't all that much. And well, you know, that's already one of the problems, I think, with Final Fantasy 15. But this game, there was plenty of content there. There was a lot for us to enjoy. And especially the first part of the series did really well, especially that early support from everybody. I really do appreciate it. It helped this series to be the most successful first 24 hours, first week, and first month of a new Final Fantasy series ever on the channel. So after so long, for people to still be supporting the channel and there still being a place that people want to come to watch Final Fantasy content and to experience these games. I take that responsibility very seriously, and that's why I try my best to give you guys the best experience that I can. The most honest one, the most authentic one, but the best one that I can provide. And so, as always, you know, it comes with its downsides, as you guys have all experienced. It's never just, you know, pure, absolute, positive, amazing, impeccable quality all the way throughout. But it has always been the best that I can give, and I always do try my best, and I want people to enjoy these playthroughs as much as possible. And even if I'm not enjoying a game so much, the best that I can offer is that at least I'm giving you guys what I truly feel about a game, and at least I want people to just understand me, and that's the best that I can hope for, because I'm not here to just sort of, you know, lie and say that I've loved and enjoyed every single game. And sometimes there are, at least, you know, it's rare that I end up coming away from a game not enjoying it much, but there are sort of sections of games where I don't enjoy it as much. I get a bit more ranty, I get a bit nitpicky, I don't like things as much, and that always happens. I mean, it's rare that you flat out enjoy every aspect of a game from start to finish for like 40, 50, 60 hours. And so, despite all of those things, hopefully you guys in general have enjoyed the ride and have enjoyed hearing my reactions and my musings, and sometimes my ranting and my general experience with the game. And just thank you all so much for continuing to support the channel enough through the viewership, through the channel memberships, through the Patreon. All of that stuff together allows me to continue to do this and share my experiences with you guys more than 15 years after starting this channel. So yeah, it takes a village, man. And much like what we've seen in this game, I can't do this alone. As much as, you know, when it comes to Dan's Go 8 channel, I am the Clive, I am the leader of the channel. If I'm just doing it for myself, then the channel has no meaning. And it's only because I get to reach, you know, an audience like this that appreciates what I do and that believes in the channel and believes in me to keep producing the content that they're going to enjoy. That's why I get to keep doing it. So you guys, in that sense, are my strength. So trying to link it a little bit to what we experienced in the game as well. But these credits are incredibly long, I have to say. Credit to the credits for being super long, because I always say it. I had an experience with The Last of Us in 2013 where I worked on the game for 3.5 months as a localization technician, and none of the team got credited in the game. And that was a massive slap in the face, because we put in work in that game. You know, we poured our heart and soul into it. And so after all of that, to not have your name credited there, it might not mean a lot to you just as someone playing the game. You're just, you know, none of these names, you're not really looking at them beyond like the main cast members or something. But for the people who worked on these games, that gave their hours and their time and their effort and their passion, it's really unfair that they don't end up in credits sometimes. And so I would take credits being this long if everyone who truly believes they deserve to be on there is credited. And I think it's an important thing for the industry. So yeah, I mean, there's just, you can just basically switch off and not watch them. A lot of them are skippable, and so I don't think it matters too much. But these are always an excuse for me to basically just start talking about the game and my experience in the lead up to a more full-on review. But if I knew it was going to be this long, I probably would have just started reviewing the game fully at this point. But it's definitely a very, very long one. And if we're still on like CG producers, there's still going to be like a lot more to come. So I've kind of run out of things to say at this point. It's rare that that happens, but I've had to talk for basically like almost half an hour straight now, probably. Maybe not half an hour, but something around 20 minutes or something. So yeah, I've kind of run out of stuff to say. I guess after this one, like I say, I don't know if there's going to be a cutscene. We haven't... I'm still a bit iffy about Joshua. I don't know if we're going to get a little mini kind of post-credits kind of joyous moment where we kind of realize that Joshua might still be alive. Dion is 100% dead. Clive, you saw his hand basically like kind of turn to stone. He gave it everything, and I don't see how he's coming back from that. He's finished. But maybe whatever he did, basically he healed Joshua's wound. So why he would have healed his wound only to have everybody die like when he blows up the crystal, that doesn't make sense to me. So I still feel like we maybe might see a spark of Joshua still being alive. So that's what I will say. There is going to be a new game plus, so we'll take a look at what that entails. And there's Final Fantasy mode. And in terms of actual content that you'll see from the playlist, basically I'll seek out those stones for the iconic time trial challenges, and I'll probably upload those as well as like a little bit of extra post game. And then from there, we will see if there's going to be any DLC. Now, I've only chatted about this with Daryl from Final Fantasy Union. He has no like inside information or anything, but he's basically like the Harpocrates of Final Fantasy. So I genuinely like to discuss these things with him and just get his opinion and his takes. And I asked him about DLC, and he basically said that in his opinion, if the game does really well, is successful, sells a lot of copies, makes a lot of money, people have really enjoyed it and they want more, I think we'll get more. But as of this point, there's no like official word on any kind of DLC or anything like that. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think even if there is one, it will be like next year. But I've been saying, Sid DLC, I'm on board, man. I would love to play a Sid DLC. That guy, for me, like, as expected, they took him out of the story early enough that he didn't end up overshadowing Clive for the whole thing. He just ended up being this like really great guy that we had for like maybe 10 hours of the story. Like 15% of it, something like that, 15-20%. If you didn't do a lot of the side quests, maybe more like 20-25% of the game. But he made enough of an impact on me and on a lot of other people that I think we would love to enjoy some, like, you know, prequel Sid tales from back in the day. I think that'd be really, really fun. So that's what I would like to see. It's an excuse for them to introduce more hunts as well. I think hunts would be a good idea. They only had like 35 or 32 or 33, something like that. It's less than Final Fantasy 12. I mean, a game that came out in 2006 had more hunts. Of course, it's about quality, not quantity, but I don't think the hunts were super high quality either. You saw, I mean, on my first playthrough, the only hunt that I died to was the one I ran into by accident, and I didn't know how the mechanics of the Doom spell worked. And I think if I spoke to like 5 or 6 people about it, I think almost every single one of them said they died in the same way. So yeah, I mean, I think the hunts could have been improved, even the S-rank ones. But I didn't see the game over screen on any of them. So I think some more like super bossy, hardcore stuff I think is necessary, especially since this is a game that's so like action heavy, reflexes. It is trying to appeal to a bit more of that sort of hardcore action gamer crowd that does pride itself on doing difficult things in these games, and, you know, hitless runs, and, you know, doing it with only this iconic ability, that iconic ability, this quickly, that quickly. I feel like for that crowd, you've got to give them something that's truly hardcore. So instead of having these guys like test themselves by trying to do things hitless, give them a boss battle that's going to take them like 20 minutes or something like that, and that's going to require true skill throughout it. So I think there's something missing there. And again, those are the types of things already that stop it from elevating to the absolute best of the best for me, because I do love a bit of a kind of a super boss kind of situation, you know, extra dungeons, that kind of thing. And so DLC might scratch that itch for me, because so far I haven't really got it. The hunts, especially like the last set that I did, there were some S ranks in there, and I wasn't even really close to dying on any of them. The dragon, the first kind of S rank dragon that was like 12 levels higher than me, it was a level 50. I think it ended up being like the highest level thing that we faced, which was weird because it appeared so early. That was the only time where I basically got KO'd and I had the final elixir to save me. And that was about it. So it's a bit strange. For these guys, I think what they're trying to do is, like, this first playthrough, we want you to have the momentum. We're not trying to make the game too hard. Just go with it. Even if you're not much of an action player, you should be fine. And just keep the story moving. Don't get bogged down on difficult boss battles and getting stuck. That stuff I get, and I think overall it was a smart move. But for the hunts are optional things. And so I think for those, especially the S-rank hunts, those should be things where, like, first-time players should be dying a few times to those at least on their journey. So I think they kind of dropped the ball a bit on that. But I think they've tried to make it so that with a new game plus, you're going to sort of go back in and things are going to be more difficult. There's the Final Fantasy difficulty, and that's going to be where you're going to find that next level if you didn't find it in the main game. So that's how it looks for this one. We'll see if these credits ever end, which I don't think they are at this stage. There might be endless credits here. If they do, then we're going to have a look here, but I'm still waiting. As of this point, I genuinely have nothing more to say. I might actually fast forward the rest of these credits so that everyone's names still appear, and I don't disrespect anybody with that. But I'm going to stop commentating. My voice is going to start going soon, and I'll rejoin you at the end of the credits. Creative Business Unit 3, huh? I have to say, I am now a believer in Yoshi P. Because I'd never played 14, I refused to get on the hype train. But will I get hyped at seeing Joshua? Let's see. Come on.
Diddy. Oh. Every time.
Will you light it?
Yes, Mother. Come on. If only I had the flames of an Eikon.
Eikon? Have you been reading that silly story again? Magic belongs in fairy tales, and fairy tales don't boil kettles. You see? Well done. Now, be a good lad and play with your brother until supper.
Come on, hurry! Hurry! All right. Right, let's play the saint in the sectary. No, I don't want to be Madhu. What do you want to play then? War of the Eikons! Again? Well, alright. And I get to be a freak. Why? I'm the older brother. Because Bahamut says so.
There we go. At least that was correct. But where one journey ends... Yeah, this is them saying like, hey, you want to do a New Game Plus? Okay, New Game Plus is now available from the title screen. This option allows you to start a new game with player and item data carried over from previously completed playthrough. The gameplay mode Final Fantasy is also now available for use exclusively with New Game Plus. Final Fantasy mode offers the following. Increased enemy strength, increased player cap level. Oh, okay, the cap was probably 50 before. New gear and items. Mode exclusive content. This mode is recommended for players who wish to test their limits. So let's just fire this up. Replay the game in Final Fantasy mode, data carried over. In this mode, the legendary Ultima weapon is available for crafting. After starting, you'll be unable to switch over to story or action mode. Okay. Starting point is after the Fall of Phoenix Gate, by the way. So you don't do the tutorial stuff again. So I'm going to skip all of this just so we get back into gameplay. Oh no, it is here. Okay, sorry. Fine.
How do they expect us to kill something that can do...
Right, I was going to say, do we keep our icons and abilities? We do. This is a true New Game Plus, which is nice. Even keep all of your ability points. You got all of this stuff. That's really cool. Okay, so that's good to know.
This!
They don't. Only the girl holding its leash.
And here we are, back where we started, where I complained about the motion blur. And yeah, it's still one of the not so great things about this game. But yeah, I think for now, I will wrap this up before doing like a kind of a much longer, rambly review about everything. I will reload the final save before going to Origin, and there I will seek out those stones and the iconic challenges that come with them, and I will try to complete those, and then I think that will be the final piece of content that I really need to do, and then from there we will just do a nice long rambly one where I share all of my thoughts and feelings about this game and wrap things up. So I think I will take a break from the game because I've been trying to, you know, work hard to complete this and get this ready so that I can kind of take things a bit easier over the summer, focus a bit more on the editing side of things and other projects. So I will take a break. This will take a while to upload because there's a lot of episodes here, and you know, you guys know me, I try to maintain my sort of consistent, nice long-term flow for this, and that's exactly what I'll be doing. And so I'll give this game a little bit of time off, let things settle down a little bit, and then I will come back to play some more of that. It'll probably take like another maybe a couple of hours, 2-3 hours tops, I would assume. And then from there, I'll be able to wrap up this series, barring DLC. So thank you all once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed playing. It's been an absolute honor and privilege to bring you guys a new Final Fantasy entry after all these years. Thank you all for the support. Really do appreciate it. Take care.